Hi, I'm Mr. Hutchings, and you're listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Today's episode is going to support Unit 4.2 Exploration, Causes, and Events of the AP World History Program. This is a period between 1450 and 1750. The themes today will be governance, economic systems, technology and innovation, and cultural developments and interactions. The historical skills that we'll use today will be causation. You can never cross the ocean unless you have the courage to lose sight of the shore. That line, often attributed to Christopher Columbus, captures the daring spirit of exploration between 1450 and 1750. This was the age when small European kingdoms, Spain, Portugal, England, France, and the Netherlands, turned outward, seeking new trade routes, new wealth, and new religious converts. But their motives weren't only adventurous, they were deeply political, economic, and religious. What would make entire governments invest in voyages that might never return? States hoped for power and profit. To control trade, claim resources, and spread their religion, exploration was a national project, not a private one, linking to the theme of governance and the skill of causation. In the 15th century, European access to Asian goods flowed through a long and costly chain. Chinese silks, Indian cottons, Southeast Asian spices, and porcelain traveled across the Indian Ocean to ports in Arabia, Persia, and East Africa. From there, caravans carried them to major Middle Eastern markets, such as Cairo, Alexandria, Damascus, Baghdad, and Tabriz. Once these goods reached the eastern Mediterranean, they entered ports controlled by the Ottomans, who taxed every shipment. From Ottoman ports, merchants moved their cargo to Venice and Genoa. These Italian city states dominated Europe's access because of their strategic location, strong naval fleets, and advanced banking networks. They functioned as Europe's gateway into the old trade system. After Venice received shipments from these places like Alexandria and Syria, and Genoa from routes near the Black Sea and Constantinople, the Italians transported the goods north to the rest of Europe. That monopoly that Venice and Genoa had raised prices across the continent of Europe. This pushed Spain and Portugal, and later England, France, and the Netherlands, to search for new routes. They hoped to bypass Italian and Ottoman middlemen and gain direct access to Asia's wealth. Exploration required ships, maps, trained crews, and months of funding, so only governments could afford it. Rulers invested because they wanted new tax bases, new markets, and direct access to gold, silver, and other profitable commodities. Religion added another layer of motivation. Many Europeans believed they had a Christian duty to spread their faith. Religious missionaries viewed new routes as opportunities to reach distant communities. For European rulers, this provided a moral justification for expansion and conquest. How do wealth and religion reinforce one another in empire building? They reinforce each other because material wealth financed voyages and missionary activity, while religious missionary goals provided moral reason for political and economic expansion. This blend of economic and cultural motives shows how intertwined the forces of causation were in early European exploration. By the 1600s, European monarchs measured national power by the amount of gold and silver in their treasuries. Because these precious metals existed in limited supply, rulers believed that wealth itself was finite. If one nation gained bullion, another must have lost it. This idea formed the core of mercantilism, an economic system built on constant competition for a fixed pool of global wealth. Under this logic, economies could grow only at someone else's expense. Expansion usually happened through war, coercion, colonialization, or even dynastic marriage alliances that brought new territory through marriage or conquest and and strawberries and new resources under a single crown. To maximize their advantage, states pushed to export more than they imported, pulling silver into the treasury while preventing the same silver from flowing out of that treasury. Mercantilism demanded strong government involvement, strict regulation of colonial trade, tight control of shipping routes, and tariffs that protected domestic industries while limiting foreign competition. Why would mercantilism push states towards empire? If wealth is finite, then territory becomes essential. Colonies gave states privileged access to resources, labor, and trade routes. They existed to enrich the mother country, showing how governance and economic systems shaped global rivalry. Portugal, small in size but bold in ambition, took the first steps. Prince Henry the Navigator sponsored voyages along Africa's coast, searching for gold and a route to Asia. Bartholomew Diaz rounded the Cape of Good Hope in 1488, proving Africa could be circumnavigated. Vasco da Gama reached India in 1498, linking Europe directly to the Indian Ocean trade, thus successfully bypassing the empires and states which taxed trade goods via tariffs along the traditional Silk Road. Portuguese ships, guided by compass and astrolabe, established trading post empires, fortified harbors at Goa, India, Malacca in Malaysia, and Hormuz, Arabia. Why did Portugal focus on trade posts instead of colonies? Because Portugal lacked manpower. A small Portuguese population could control key choke points instead of vast territories. An example of adapting technology and innovation to limited resources. The limited resources in this example would be a limited supply of manpower. After merchants came religious Christian missionaries. Jesuit priests like Matteo Ricci and Adam Scala von Bell arrived in China with maps, clocks, and astronomical instruments. They hoped that sharing scientific knowledge would open doors for religious conversion. Chinese scholars admired their learning but resisted religious conversion. The encounter between the religious Christians and the Chinese scholars was respectful yet cautious. Knowledge shared, but beliefs unmoved. What does this reveal about cultural exchange during exploration? It shows that exchange was two-way. Europe brought science, but also learned diplomacy and restraint from Asia. The theme of cultural developments and interactions reminds us that explorations spreads ideas as well as empires. In 1492, Christopher Columbus, backed by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand, sailed west to reach Asia and stumbled upon the Americas. His voyages launched the Spanish Empire, linking Europe, Africa, and the New World in one global system. Later, Ferdinand Magellan's expeditions of 1519 to 1522 proved that the Earth could be circumnavigated, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific worlds. Spain seized the Philippines in 1565, making Manila a commercial hub between Asia and the Americas, where silver from Mexico paid for silk and spices from China. What made the Manila galleons so significant? The Manila galleons being the Spanish trade ships. Well, the answer is they created the first continuous global trade route, a direct link between Asia and the Americas. This was the beginning of worldwide economic integration under the theme of economic systems. As Portugal and Spain built early empires, northern European states entered the competition. France focused first on finding a northwest passage to Asia. Jacques Cartier, or Jacques Cartier, pronounced both ways, explored the St. Lawrence River, and Samuel de Champlain founded Quebec in 1608. France soon discovered that the region's wealth was not gold but furs, especially beaver pelts, which European markets desperately wanted. Centuries of overhunting had nearly wiped out European beavers, yet beaver felt hats remained central to elite fashion. This made North America's abundant beaver population extremely valuable. French traders exchanged metal tools, cloth, glass beads, and weapons for these beaver furs, forming partnerships with Native American nations rather than building large settler colonies. England sent John Cabot to claim lands from Newfoundland to Chesapeake Bay. England's defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 marked England's rise as a serious naval power. The first lasting English settlement, Jamestown, 1607, laid the foundation for English America and gave England access to tobacco and new Atlantic markets. The Dutch entered the imperial race through commerce. The Dutch sent Henry Hudson to explore the river that now bears his name. In 1625, the Dutch founded New Amsterdam, modern New York City, a trading hub where furs, tobacco, and European manufactured goods moved in constant exchange. Like the French, the Dutch relied on alliances with Native Americans to access the fur rich regions of North America. Why did northern empires emphasize trade more than conquest? It's because the northern empires arrived later, found fewer opportunities for direct conquest, and focused instead on commercial partnerships. Their smaller populations and strong merchant classes favored capitalism and trade over territorial empire, showing how governance and economic systems shaped their approach to expansion. Let's trace the web of cause and effect. It begins with technological causes, improved navigation and shipbuilding. It moves to economic causes, desire for gold, silver, and spices. Then to political causes, rivalries, and mercantilism. And then finally to religious causes, missionary zeal, and Catholic Protestant competition. Competition meaning that Catholic states of Europe and Protestant states of Europe were both motivated to explore to bring new native populations to their respective version of religious truth, whether Catholic or Protestant. What cause was most decisive for exploration? I would say it would be economics. Religion and politics mattered, but the quest for resources and markets sustained exploration long after faith lost its fire. Using causation, we can summarize the logic of the early modern era. A cause is state sponsored maritime exploration, and the effect is new global trade networks and expanding colonial empires. This had short term effects, such as sudden influxes of silver, expanding cultural exchange, intensifying rivalry among European empires, especially Portugal, Spain, England, France, and the Netherlands, as each competed for routes, resources, colonies, and naval power. There were long term effects, the beginnings of globalization, and growing patterns of global inequality as European powers concentrated wealth and control over trade. Was exploration inevitable once technology advanced? Not entirely. Technology made long distance voyages possible, but ambition, competition, and political decision making made them happen. Human choices, not inventions alone, created this world system. Between 1450 and 1750, a handful of voyages redrew the world. Empires rose on golden faith, cultures collided, oceans became highways. The age of exploration reminds us that every discovery carries consequences for those who venture out and for those who are found. What lesson endures from this age of exploration? One lesson is that exploration is never just about where we go, but about why we go and who pays the price. I'm Mr. Hutchings, and you've been listening to Mr. Hutchings History. Thank you as always. Join me again. Until next time, stay curious. History matters.